So today we're going to walk through independent and dependent events. I'll go through some of the examples with you throughout this video as well, as you'll be doing them in class. So first off, independent and dependent events. An independent event is when the occurrence of one event has no impact on the second event. Okay, think of the word independent itself. You are independent, you don't need any help, there's nothing that's going to affect what you're doing because you are independent, right? So whatever happens to one, not going to affect the outcome of the other. Dependent events need each other. They work together. So whatever happens with the first event is going to determine what's going to happen the second event, okay? So we have two situations here. So the first one is if I have two six-sided die and I roll them, whether I roll them one at a time or if I roll them together, do they have an impact on each other? Does what their outcome happens to be on one die affects the second die? And the answer is no, it's independent. Because if I roll the one die, I still have 1 through 6. When I roll the second die, I still have 1 through 6. They're two completely independent dice doing their own separate thing. And then I can find the probability of whatever it is I'm asking together. Now, part B is I have 6 pieces of paper, 1 through 6. So something that looks, like these, right? I got numbers on papers, yeah. If I'm picking out 2 pieces of paper, one at a time, which is important here, I'm not grabbing 2 pages, in a clump. I'm picking one out and then a second one out. Do they have an impact on the second one? And the answer is yes here. These are dependent, because if I was to pick out any paper, so I pick out a 3 here, that 3 can now no longer be pulled the second time I pull a number. It is out of running at this point, right? So this time it does depend, because at the first shot, I have numbers 1 through 6. But then when I take out this, the second time around, I can only pick a 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6. There's no more 3 in that option. So the value that I picked the first time around did impact the second time around. So that is something that is considered a dependent event. And we're going to go through some examples and talk about that more in detail in class. Okay. So the second problem is we're going to work through just some examples of independent and dependent events and find their probabilities. And we'll do these examples in class, but basically, if 2 events are independent of each other, then the probability of those 2 events is the probability of event 1 times the probability of event 2. And by the way, you can have as many events as you can think of. You're just going to keep multiplying each event's probability times itself. Okay, and that would be your independent event. Okay, so for instance, if I look at example 1, I'm just going to go through this one real quick. We have true or false, 4 questions. We did this in in a previous video where I went through all the question values. We want to find the probability of guessing question 1 correctly and guessing question 2 correctly. Okay, again, we can pull up that sample space if we need to. Well, first of all, if I look at question 1 correct, we had 16 in that sample space. And if I pull it up, which I'll show you real quick. So here was our sample space. If I look at this, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 corrects in question 1. So it's 8 out of 16. And for question 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So again, another 8 out of 16. So if I go back here, okay, and again, I would have the probability of 1 correct was 8 out of 16, or 1/2 if you want to reduce it. The probability of 2 correct was also 8 out of 16, or 1/2. So the probability of getting question 1 correct and question 2 correct is 1/2 times 1/2, or 1/4, or 25%. Okay, so that is the probability of getting the first two questions correct. And again, we could go back and even look at the sample space and see how many times that happened, and if it does justify being 25%. But we can calculate, again, pretty easily those events and then multiply them together. And again, that is something that's considered an independent event. And we'll go through more examples like this in the class period. All right, so we'll move along, take a look at dependent events. So dependent events is a little bit different. So we have the probability of an event A and event B is going to equal the probability of event A times the probability of event B with A taken away. So you have to take that value out when talking about probability of B. We've already removed it. Just like when I was pulling the numbers, I pulled a 3 that was no longer part of the pieces of paper for me to pick from. Okay, so for this example, we have a group of 4 students, 1 boy, 3 girls. The teacher's randomly selecting one of the students to be a speaker and the second one to be a recorder. We want to find the probability that the teacher is randomly selecting a girl first and then a girl second. Okay, so if we walk through that one. So to get a girl first, well, from the first round of choices, there's 4 people, so that's your total, and 3 of them are girls. So she has a 3 out of 4 chance of picking a girl for the first round. But now for picking a girl second, let's say that event actually happened. So if she actually picked a girl the first time around, actually, regardless of who she picked, she still has 3 left to go for the second time around. She no longer has 4. We've decreased the amount of people she could choose from. And then saying she picked a girl first off, well, there was 3. If she picked that girl, well, now there's 2. So now it's 2 out of 3 this time. And again, if we put those together, the probability of a girl first and then a girl second is going to be those 2 multiplied. So 3/4 times 2/3. And this should make sense that this is B/A, B with A taken away, because you decreased your value by the amount of which you took out the first time. So if I'm taking 1 girl away the first time, I'm decreasing my value by 1. And again, when you multiply that out, you are going to get about 50%. You get 6 over 12. Okay, so again, that's a dependent event. When you had a starting amount and then you took something away. So the second time around, so this would be my A, and this is my B with A removed. I took 1 away, so I had to take 1 from the total on the top end, and I take 1 from the total on the bottom end. Okay, and again, just like before, you are still going to multiply the 2 probabilities, but again, in the dependent, their totals stay the same. It was still 16, something out of 16. This time the totals decreased. They went from 4 possible students she could choose from to 3. Because remember, you can't keep the same person. You can't choose the same person twice there. Okay. And again, we'll go through a bunch of different probabilities and examples throughout the class. We'll also see how things like this deck of cards question, whether you replace or do not replace, is going to play a role in whether things are independent or dependent. And again, we'll be doing more of all of this in class. And I'll also produce a video a little bit later on going through every single one of these examples as well.